learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Our intuitive faculties as human beings respond to the intention of peoples, whether conscious or subconscious. Dr. Maya Angelou explained to us the true interconnectedness on an energetic level of all human beings and all that inhabits the earth. For intention is principle, and integrity is the act of being courageous enough to allow one's actions to reflect those intentions. Dr. Maya Angelou teaches us how to walk with integrity and authenticity in the face of oppression. Grandmother Maya Angelou taught us how to believe people when they show us who they are the first time. Till this day, one of the biggest life lessons I've ever learned. And it sticks with me. Let us not be swayed by a potential attempt by the mainstream to assimilate her into history as a harmless old writer. And let us pay homage to the fierce Black internationalist, Maya Angelou. Ashe. Partnered with Brother El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, also known as Malcolm X, to vocalize the issues plaguing Black America then and still. Fierce organizer Maya Angelou, who labored tirelessly to promote and fundraise for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Divine womanist Maya Angelou, who showed us what it means to be a woman phenomenally. The fire in my eyes and the sway in my waist and the joy in my feet. I'm a woman phenomenally. Phenomenal woman. Thank you, Maya, for reminding us what we consistently forget. For in this digital age of financialization and privatization, it becomes difficult to grasp what's real outside of the material. When I think about myself, I almost laugh myself to death. My life has been one great big joke. A dance that's walked, a song that spoke. I laugh so hard, I almost choke. When I think about myself. 70 years in these folks' world, the child I works for calls me girl. I say, yes, ma'am, for working's sake. I'm too proud to bend and too poor to break. So I laugh until my stomach aches when I think about myself. My folks can make me split my side so hard, I nearly died. The tales they tell sound just like lying. They grow the fruit that eat the rind. I laugh until I start to cry when I think about myself and my folks. Children. My fathers sit on benches. Their flesh count every plank. The slates leave dents on darkness, deep in their withered flank. And they gnaw like broken candles, all waxed and burned and profound. They say, but sugar, it was our submission that made your world go round. There in those pleated faces, I see the auction block, the chains and slavery's coffers, the mission lash. And stop. My fathers speak in voices that shred my fact and sound. They say, but sugar, it was our submission that made your world go round. They laugh to conceal their crying. They shuffle through their dreams. They stepped and fetched a country and wrote the blues and screams. I understand their meaning, the could and did derive from living on the edge of death. They kept my race alive. By wearing the mask, by wearing the mask, by wearing the mask. Thank you, Maya Angelou, for everything that you are, for everything that you were, for everything that you do, for everything that you have taught us. Ashe.
Ashe.
To all our guests,
Yeah.
my name is Professor Stacy Mitchell. I teach for the Pan-African Studies Department, and we thank you and we welcome you for being here. So as our alumni, our sister Lola just shared with you, we are honoring Dr. Maya Angelou today, our ancestor who is passed, but she left us with plenty. And so I know you've probably been hearing it all day, but we can't let the night go by without talking about Still I Rise. And I know many of you know it, and if you do, you need to help me out, all right? Work with me. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still, I rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise up from a past that's rooted in pain. I rise, I am a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise into a day that's wondrously clear. I rise, bringing the gifts my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave. I rise. I rise. I rise. Marguerite Johnson, aka Maya Angelou. Her melodic, caged bird helped free me in my youth, validated me, showed me proof of our importance, not impotence, in literature and life. High school English, swelled with pride, arm raised high. I will clearly read aloud this story, miss. I will share these passages. I am one of two here who should. I am one of one here who would. This is my story, finally. Born and raised in Cali, but this girl is me. Much more so than that little orphan white boy. And plus, his story is not real and my life's no toy. This made me laugh, this made me cry, this got me hot, this tended my fire. So I met with her and her family and her name, and I was so glad she came to rescue me, to bring me into our shared reality, out of the Nancy Drew mysteries, contextually, African. We sang, we swang, we got merrier than Christmas, up all night like the holiday's eve. Couldn't close my eyes, couldn't close that book sleeve. I was inside the art, couldn't give up on me. I was inside her heart. Together, we bleed. And the heart of this woman made me question mine. The life this woman lived simply paled mine. Yet through hers, I was enriched. I traveled the world, from Africa through Europe, worked along the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., El Haj El Malik Shabazz, Brother Malcolm, smoked and drank in bars in Brooklyn, worked my family store in Stamps, Arkansas, deep, deep south, like where my mama from. And as she articulated her experiences, I wondered at my mama less, mother. I knew and loved African royalty. I had a son, he a small extension of me, and I watched as he grew into a man, and I, the mother, still stupidly calling him baby. And still I rose at Black Student Alliances, reciting her works and dazzling their senses, sending shivers down spines, bringing tears to eyes, stinging their noses, quivering their thighs. Sister girl, woman, so inspired by your words, your openness, your self-depreciation, your self-depreciating turns left me wondering, pondering, marveling. I would have loved to hear you sing. The beauty is, every few years I can visit you again. Same stories keep changing as I evolve within, and I'm still growing, still walking my paths, traveling shoes thinning, time's flying past. Now I'm a woman, no longer a girl. Now I'm a mother to 2 boys and a girl, and she's so pretty. Ooh, feel me. Now I'm a lover. Now I have a man, and you've always been with me. Your courage, the stand you took to live and share your life, teacher. So I refer from time to time when I wonder, am I good enough? I am told to straighten my spine, hold my head high, push my shoulders back, stand tall, look tough, stay strong, hold fast, and never, never, never let the animals smell fear. With him, I smile. I feed, say sweetly, yes, dear. My other mother, artist. And again, I know I am. I am. I am. We are. Maybe one day our lifelines should touch. Perhaps the cycle of artistry will provide me as much. Maya Angelou, you mean and have showed the world to me. Ancestor, I can just hear you chuckle. Thank you. So I kind of want to sing a song. Right. No, I won't do that. Greetings, Habari Gani. My name is Dr. Malina Abdullah. I'm the chair of the Department of Pan-African Studies here at Cal State LA. And for those of you who are not a major, a minor, who are not enrolled in Pan-African Studies classes, who've never taken a Pan-African Studies class, Pan-African Studies is the study of and the study with and the study for and the study by Black people wherever we are in the world, right? And so, as the chair of the department, on behalf of the department, on behalf of our faculty, on behalf of our students, on behalf of the community that we work alongside of, we want to welcome you to the 7th Annual Pan-African Studies Forum. You know, we've the Luckman Theater before. Usually we do the Pan-African Studies Forum in a room that holds about 150 people. Maybe we shove in 250. And we have a real family event, and we did that. But now we're at the Luckman Theater, and as I was thinking about how to welcome you, I also thought about what brought us to the Luckman Theater. And we're blessed to be at the Luckman Theater with over 1,000 people in attendance. And we're blessed to be joined by one of the greatest minds ever, Dr. Cornel West. And at the same time, I have to step back and ask, where were you last year? Where were you the year before? Where were you when we were struggling for an ethnic studies requirement on this campus? Seated in this audience, where were you when we were struggling for justice for Trayvon Martin? Justice for Oscar Grant? When we were struggling to bring a wellness center to Watts, to create media done responsibly, to stop LAPD spying? Where were you? Where are you? And so here we hope that we'll plant the seeds and invite you to join us in this long struggle, these 45 years of struggle since the founding of Pan-African Studies here at Cal State LA, the second oldest department of Pan-African Studies in the nation. We celebrate 45 years, and we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors in that struggle, especially our dear ancestor, Baba CRD Halisi, who departed from us a year ago and was our senior scholar. So we say to you tonight, welcome to our house. And we're also asking you to not forget us tomorrow. And so with that, I want to bring up one who embodies the spirit of our senior scholar. And those of you, I can't see you. So I've never been on a stage. I'm not a performer, I'm a professor. Yeah, can you? Can I see? Is there a way to make me be able to see the audience? Turn on the house lights. So now I can see you. So I see you, and I'm going to ask each of you, tomorrow, remember Pan-African Studies is still here. And Pan-African Studies still struggles forward with one tenure-track faculty member who answers the phone, who calls each of her students personally, who works with a tireless group of lecturer faculty members who have no guarantee of employment, who enlists the help of volunteers to help keep the doors open because we have a phenomenal department coordinator who's simultaneously volunteering her time in the department and caring for her father who is ill, right, and who has been ill for the last 6 months at least. So we ask you tomorrow to stop by King Hall C3095 and see what you can do. For the faculty who are here, semesters, we hope that you will think critically about what Dr. West has to say and about your own positions on things like an ethnic studies requirement. We ask that this not be another case of someone or of a group of people who want to go see another celebrity sighting, but a group of people who are here because they really believe in what it is we're doing, because you are committed to being a part of the struggle for justice and equality in the world and on this campus. And so I was supposed to have 3 minutes, and I think I've taken that and made that my own. It's my own interpretation of 3 minutes. I do want to thank you for being here, and I hope that you listen with an open mind, that you engage, that you think about your role in the struggle. And I want to bring forward one of our best scholars, our Halisi scholar, Adal Osman, who's going to give a student perspective and introduce our keynote speaker.
All right. How's everyone doing today? I can't really see you all, but we'll do. Okay, so hey, turn the lights back on. The people want the lights on. The lights. Yeah, I don't want to start a little chant, but lights, please. There we go. I can see my people now. Okay. All right, before I start, I'd just like to thank all my family that are not in attendance today. I'm kidding, actually. I got a cousin up there, right there, Nolan, yeah. Mashallah, man, that's family right there. I'm really happy that they could join us today. Say it again. Right here? All right. So thank you to everyone who's in attendance tonight. The Department of Pan-African Studies here at CSULA is proud to continue our intellectual tradition by hosting the 7th Annual Pan-African Studies Forum. It is an honor to have Dr. Cornel West as our distinguished speaker. To guide our intellectual discourse, the topic of our focus for this year's forum will be on the indispensability of Black Studies for understanding the falsity of post-racialism. In our quest for self-knowledge, Dr. West will offer us his candid and insightful social commentary. He will also discuss what has changed in America, what went wrong in the course of its history, and how Black Studies was founded. Establishing the academic foundation for Black Studies continues to be meticulous work. As various scholars have shaped a critical discourse, their political and social centrality to the African diaspora has brought forth a counter-narrative to impact people's modern perceptions of race. The preconceived notion that we live in a post-racial society in the United States fosters complacency. It's 2014, and discrimination, disenfranchisement, and marginalization still exist. However, so too does the struggle for equality and justice continue. Now, the first time I ever heard Dr. West speak was as a guest on Bill Maher's television show. Who would have thunk it, right? The segment originally aired on September 7th, 2007. I was only 16 at that time. But my critical consciousness was being awakened, and Dr. West spoke to me directly. At that time, and we've spoken on this, but at that time, I attended a Franklin High School and classified as an African American student in the Elk Grove Unified School District, just south of the city of Sacramento. Anybody from Sacramento? 916. I hear you, Brother West, I hear you. Yeah. Nonetheless, the topics being discussed on the TV made for interesting social commentary, as it involved a Shiloh Baptist Christian kind of brother in Dr. West, a devout Muslim in Mighty Most Def, now known as Yasin Bey, and a devout atheist in Bill Maher. So much of the conversation centered on 9/11, Islamophobia, racialization, and the mischaracterization of individuals that live in America. What struck me was that this notion of mischaracterizing someone Most Def really got heated in that moment, and I remember Dr. West grabbing his shoulder as to almost saying, I hear you, right? And he just spoke very candidly about coercion and apparatus and how these things are either state-sponsored ideas or ideas of the people. So, you know, I was drawn to that social plurality, and Dr. West's philosophical approach to attain the most universal and just truth. In his brilliant memoir, Brother West, Living and Loving Out Loud, Dr. West's life experience provided my insightful reflection as I could relate it to my major in Pan-African Studies. And I quote, "I must break through the isolated academic frameworks while, at the same time, building on the best of my academic knowledge. I will fuel the fire of my soul so my intellectual blues can set others on fire. And more importantly, I must be a free spirit. I must unapologetically reveal my broken life as a thing of beauty." That statement is profound in its very nature. I was raised appreciating such sentiments because they echoed the importance of empathizing with other human beings in their daily, day-to-day struggles. Struggling is a part of my everyday existence. Fast forward to today, and everything has come full circle. It's a neat coincidence that Dr. West attended Kennedy High School, my high school's friendly rival across the city. But hey, we're from Sacramento, right? So talk about a small world. I've driven past Irene B. West Elementary School, and we spoke about this earlier, a school honored to your mother, the first African-American teacher and principal in the Elk Grove Unified School District. That deserves an applause, yes. Such acute geographical familiarities have allowed me to connect with Dr. West's journey to becoming a leading intellectual scholar in Black Studies. So now I'll try to give you guys a little bit of my student perspective here. Having taken PAS 403 this quarter, a class focusing on racism, sexism, and the media, I have explored the history, impact, and function of new ethnic news media in the United States. Moral of the story? Be careful what you internalize while watching TV. Luckily, I had Dr. West, and he had something important to say, right? But in all seriousness, advertising now relies on psychographic analytics that manipulate and forge social identities. Media outlets now function as weapons of mass distraction. The culture industry is booming, and popular culture is now a standardized commodity. Notable critical theorists such as Theodore Adorno and Max Horkheimer describe a supply-driven capitalistic economy as only looking to promote the materialization of the superficial self. And I have to agree. Today, we are diving deeper to wrestle with the depths of our own souls. We must share in our experiences. The indispensability of Black Studies for understanding the falsity of post-racialism is reflected in Dr. West's deep commitment to his educational vision. The students at CSULA stand in solidarity and remain steadfast in our advocacy for ethnic studies. Yeah, one more time for ethnic studies, yeah. From today forth, our bond is unbreakable with Dr. West. Having earned his bachelor's degree from Harvard University in 1973, and get this, in 3 years, then went on to earn his PhD in philosophy at Princeton University by the year 1980. He is the first African American to have graduated with a PhD in philosophy at Princeton University. Talk about a trailblazer. In addition, he has held teaching positions at Harvard University, Princeton University, Union Theological Seminary in New York, and the University of Paris. Focusing his studies on issues related to race, class, and gender in the American society, Dr. West has also published numerous critically acclaimed books, such as Race Matters, Democracy Matters, and The Future of American Progressivism, and many more. And I suggest you guys grab one of his books and actually read through. Having given a plethora of lectures at various events around the world, the CSULA community and its guests are excited to welcome our dear brother. So without further ado, please rise and give your warmest welcome to leading philosopher, academic, activist, author, public intellectual, Dr.
In this institution in this city, we just had a magnificent gathering just a few minutes ago with magnificent students here and the faculty. I want to salute the faculty in general and the faculty in the Department of Pan-African Studies in particular. Give it up for the faculty. California State University, Los Angeles, Department of Pan-African Studies. My dear assistant, Dr. Professor Marlena Abdullah. To be there as well. He had some very powerful words to say. I'm told that he was just institutionalized just a few days ago. My dear brother William Covina. Give it up for brother Covina. But it is true that we've had such high quality conversation already, and I was blessed to arrive about 12 o'clock, and I went directly to Martin Luther King Jr. Hospital that recently opened. The outpatient was opened there, and Mark Ridley Thomas had a magnificent ceremony. And you all know Mark Ridley Thomas, one of the grand visionary leaders here in Los Angeles. On the Board of Supervisors, runs the Board of Supervisors. I've known him for 34 years, and I was just so deeply moved to see on the ground what is taking place, not just at that hospital, but at that magnificent Magnet High School, the King Drew Magnet High School, and then of course Charles Drew University with Brother Carlisle at the helm. It's just for me an inspiration because I come from New York City, and I know there's a lot of hype about New York City having a progressive mayor, and it is a wonderful shift to move from Michael Bloomberg to Bill de Blasio. But don't get it twisted. The suffering is still so pervasive. The massive unemployment is still so ugly. The indecent housing is still ubiquitous, and the levels of hyper-incarceration that's taking place and the stop and frisk that's still taking place is something that we ought not to overlook. And so to be able to leave New York for a moment and come to Los Angeles and to see the spirit on the ground of those Sly Stone called precious everyday people at work. Oh, indeed, indeed, indeed. At this 7th annual Pan-African Forum, and it is a forum, so we're going to have dialogue, and you can see I am in no rush at all. I'll stay here as long as you like. Plane doesn't leave until 6:30 tomorrow morning, so I'm in good shape. I'm glad to have a voice. 2 days ago I couldn't speak at all, and so nothing but the Lord kicked in for me as a Christian, allowed my voice to come back. I think one of the reasons why it came back, it wanted me to be able to say hello to my very dear brother. He, of course, is one of the giants in your midst. I'm talking about my dear brother, Professor Dr. Maulana Karenga. Where is he? Where is he? Yeah, give it up. Stand up, my brother. Stand up, brother. Give it up, brother. Get at it now. Decade after decade after decade after decade, it's still strong. Magnificent book on Malcolm X that will be out just a little bit. I can't wait to write the introduction. No, I heard that chapter in Philadelphia. It was brilliant, though, brother. Get inside one of the greatest freedom fighters of the barbaric, bestial, and brutal 20th century and still try to provide some light in that dark century. That's the Malcolm X that all of us need to learn from. And anybody who thinks that they can understand modernity without understanding not just Malcolm X, but John Coltrane, W.B. Du Bois, E. Franklin Frazier, Duke Ellington, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, Angela Davis, Curtis Mayfield, Johnny Hathaway, Nina Simone, the Dramatics and the Whispers. If you think you can understand America, if you think you can understand the modern world, if you think you can understand what it means to be human without Black studies, the doings and sufferings of Africans in the New World, it means that you haven't had a strong enough commitment to truth and justice. I'm interested in Black studies. I'm doing Black folk a favor. I know they've been catching hell all this time, and I want them to be psychologically stable. No. Black studies sits at the very center of the mission of every institution of higher learning, which is the fallible quest for truth and knowledge and the attempt to use that truth and knowledge to keep fragile experiments in democracy alive. If you have an interest in that question, do you understand that Black studies is indispensable? Unavoidable, inescapable. And of course, we understand this in the last few weeks, to lose giants like Vincent Harding. You all know the great Vincent Harding. Wrote the speech of Martin Luther King Jr. beyond Vietnam, breaking the silence. One of the first Black PhDs in the University of Chicago. Black Mennonite. It's not a mass movement. Like a Black Quaker. Oh, he was a powerful spirit, towering intellectual. We'd already lost our dear brother. We shall never, ever forget Amiri Baraka. Literary genius, revolutionary to the core, always on fire, whether you agreed with him or not. You can never call into question the authenticity of his commitment to those Franz Fanon called the wretched of the earth. Mary Brock. And now, our dear sister, Maya Angelou. My God. Think back in 1965, just 3.5 weeks, we lost Lorraine Hansberry, Malcolm X, Nat King Cole, all within just 3.5 weeks. Certain moments of concentrated loss. And anytime there's concentrated loss, what does it mean? It makes us invoke them. It makes us come to terms with invocation, and invocation is inseparable from wrestling with our vocation. What is our calling, not just our career? What are we here for? What is our vocation as opposed to just our profession? What is our life task as opposed to just the job that you might have at the moment? These are the kinds of moments we have to stop and allow ourselves, and not just reflect, but be unsettled, be unhoused and unearthed, to allow ourselves to be pushed and challenged, just like a funeral. If you go to a funeral and you don't find yourself asking yourself some troubling questions. You didn't understand what the ritual was about. Well, let's just be very honest about it. That we live at a time in which it's very difficult to just stop and reflect and be unsettled. Our dear brother Dawg said it so very well. We live in a moment where we're always on the run and on the move, but unsure exactly where we're going. Not clear about what the direction really is. So I want to begin by invoking the great W.B. Du Bois. He's 89 years old. He decides to embark on the writing of 3 novels. 89. And he finishes each one. Let me give you the context. He's just emerged from a U.S. court. He's been charged working for a foreign agent. He had to break from the NAACP because he and Paul Robeson and some other courageous freedom fighters have decided to take the United States to the United Nations and put them on trial for the violation of the human rights of black people in 1947. Anytime you go that far, say, America, do you have the capacity to be truthful about yourself? Do you have the capacity to actually connect that quest for truth to some kind of practice of judgment? This is 1947. Now, there may have been a lot of white scholars in the mainstream who said, well, America seemed to be reaching rough justice, but no, you still had American terrorism operating called Jim Crow, and don't just call it segregation and discrimination. Don't sanitize it, don't sterilize it, don't deodorize it. We're talking about terrorism. We're talking about stigmatizing. We're talking about traumatizing. So that's why the Lord went to the United Nations. Black freedom movement has always been an anti-terrorist movement.
Yes.
In the face of American terrorism, we had to try to straighten our backs up and preserve some sense of our dignity and our sanity and our sense of possibility. Of course, when Martin Luther King Jr. called Malcolm X on June 27, 1964, and said, I'm willing to join you, because Malcolm had said in May, I'm going to the United Nations to put the United States on trial for the violation of the human rights of black people. Martin and Martin were trying to come together. Would have been a very different modern history, American history, black history, if those two had been able to come together. 3 days later, they poisoned the food of Brother Malcolm as he first arrived in Cairo. That kind of coming together. Of course, they had disagreements. Martin was a Jesus-loving free black man, and Malcolm X was a revolutionary Muslim. But they had magnificent overlap, too. They were committed not just to overcoming the suffering of black folk, not just motivated by a profound love of black people, but they were also concerned about a quest for the love of truth. And it's so easy to ghettoize and trivialize black people's activities. As if somehow our intellectuals and our writers and our musicians are always just concerned with racial identity. But a genius like Eugene O'Neill, who writes magnificently and majestically about an Irish family, is always concerned about the human condition. Please spare me. Our great brother Arthur Miller, our dear Jewish brother, from the death of himself, and everybody knew that Willie Lomas was a Jewish brother. Because you can get through the particular to the universal. No matter who that particular is, if you have enough intellectual power and enough intellectual courage. But oh, when it comes to people of African descent, always a different litmus test. And one is always on a perpetual audition. No matter how many times you test it, you come back the next time you're starting always anew. What is the quote, Brother West? Du Bois, when you turn to page 275 of that first novel, The Ordeal of Man's Art. He says, all of my life I've been wrestling with four questions. Four questions. The first question is, how does integrity face oppression? How does integrity face oppression? He doesn't say cupidity, love of money. We all need money. We all need our cash. But anytime money becomes a determining factor of what you say and what you do, you are living a life of unadulterated idolatry. Cupidity. He didn't say banality either. The willingness to be so shaped by cupidity that you downplay veracity. You downplay the truth. Du Bois knew, as he said in The Souls of Black Folk in 1903, 54 years before the novel, he said, when America in general and black people in particular become so seduced by dollars and smartness, it will be a sign of their spiritual emptiness. That's prescient. That's prophetic. And somebody gonna tell us the boys ought not to be studied, to understand the modern world, to understand America, to understand these lies put forward in the name of America being post-racial. Please, America is just less racist than electing a brilliant black president, but less racist doesn't mean that the vicious legacy of white supremacy is not operating in a variety of different ways, overtly and otherwise. Colorblindness can become a species of moral blindness. It can lead toward what the great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel calls spiritual blackout. You actually so thoroughly lose your sense of what it is to have a soul that you're no longer a hypocrite. You're just a gangster. Hypocrisy is the price that vice pays to virtue. So at least if you're a hypocrite, you still have standards. You're just violating them. If you're a gangster, you have no standards. Like too much of Wall Street in the last few decades. No standards at all. Power. No longer even being hypocritical about it because there's no claims of accountability and answerability. You do what you want to do in the dark, behind the shadows, nobody even keeping track of you. And when you finally get caught and your criminality is revealed, not one will go to jail. Not one will go to jail. Oh, let the mom and the teacher get caught on the corner in South Central with crack, going straight to jail. Straight to jail. Justice system, not just racist, but itself so many ways criminal. 3 generations of poor brown and black children pushed into the big house, and everybody obsessed with one black man in the White House, and what about 1 million in the big house? The Newsweek book, the president of this complex, 61% of them for assault, drug offenses, 61%. We're talking today, I've taught in prisons now for 37 years, started in Norfolk. Right now I'm in Rahway. Every Friday night we wrestle with Plato Augustine, Lorraine Hansberry, Samuel Beckett, Toni Morrison, and a host of others. And I've seen it grow from 300,000 to 2.5 million, even when the crime goes down. The boys raised the question, how does integrity face oppression, not cupidity and not venality? And let's be honest, in terms of the black context, we have a very different black leadership if those who were going to prison were upper middle class black brothers and sisters rather than poor black brothers and sisters. Oh yes, let some Jack and Jill brothers and sisters start going to jail at the same level of Precious Jamal and Precious Letitia. All of a sudden our churches wouldn't just be mega churches with building funds. Maybe they'd have a prison ministry every once in a while. Would be able to focus more directly on the new Jim Crow rather than looking for money from places we need not talk about. Maybe our professors would not find themselves so obsessed with access. Access to power becomes a new crack for the black professional class. Nothing wrong with access to power if you're going there with purpose. But if you're just going there to be decorative and ornamental, if you're going there just to be successful, and you forget what you're faithful to, then you end up incorporating, co-opting, you end up selling out. Trophy spouse, look at my status, and I can say, oh, you turned into a peacock, huh? Somewhere I read, way back in black folklore, peacocks strut because they can't fly. I come from a people of evil. I come from a great black people that's born with dignity, with deep track on the ground, and people catching hell, not just folk breaking the glass ceiling, but those locked into the basement. That's the vantage point. That's the starting point of what Black Studies is all about. How do you look at the world through the lens of the widow and the stranger and the poor and the fatherless and the motherless and those who are getting hell, especially the chocolate ones? You begin with the chocolate ones, it will spill over. It's going to get to the vanilla ones soon, but sooner, but you got to get your starting point right. Black Studies has never simply been about black people. Never. How in the world are you going to account for black people without the nature of our interactions with a whole host of different folk, beginning not with white brothers and sisters, but other Africans, indigenous people, our precious Latino brothers and sisters. We all mix together in all the different ways. But then when you have a whole host of black folk in the United States dreaming in English, dreaming in the language of Shakespeare and John Milton and Thomas Harding and George Eliot, you know some kind of cultural hybridity has set in. So the very notion that Black Studies somehow is way off in the corner rather than at the center. And when you look at America from the vantage point of black folk at the center, oh, it looks very different. Very different. A white brother named Thomas Paine. He arrived in America 37 years old from Thetfield, the village there in Norfolk, in England. He stepped off the boat in Philadelphia with his introduction letter from Ben Franklin. And he looked around and said, this is the land of liberty, and I see all of these black folk, the auction block. Within months, he wrote an essay called African Slavery. And he said, I want to talk about the wretched ones, the barbaric ones, the wicked ones, my fellow white brothers. That's Thomas Paine, as white as Why? Because he also had an interest in truth and justice. But he cut radically against the grains. Well, Brother West, his father was a Quaker. That's true, so he got a jump start in life. Quakers, very, very unique kind of white brothers and sisters. They have no monopoly on truth and justice, but they tilt in that direction. Oh, they do. Against a very thick white supremacist disposition, institutionalized, legalized. Du Bois's first question: how does integrity face oppression? It would be very, very difficult to find in American history, in modern history. I speak in terms of my own family. We were talking about this earlier, from Sacramento, Clifton and Irene, my parents, and Cynthia and Cheryl. Clifton, my own brothers and sisters. My church, Shiloh Baptist Church, where Willie P. Cook, my magnificent pastor, just recently passed. Deacon Henry Hitter, my deacon boy. It's hard to find persons, high exemplifications of integrity. You think, in the history of this nation, who comes to mind when you think of integrity? Martin King. You all have your own. I say Uncle Earl, but I mean, I don't have time to go into And I'm not saying that white brothers and sisters and others don't have people of magnificent integrity, but can you imagine what goes into choosing to be a person of integrity when you're dealing with 244 years of systematic and chronic enslavement and 90 years of lynching, terrorism, trauma, and stigma? Think of Emmett Till's mother. Oh, what an exemplar of integrity. She stepped to the lectern, looks over that lectern and sees her precious baby brother Emmett is in the coffin. She refuses to keep it closed right there in Roberts Temple Church of God in Christ on the west side of Chicago, that same west side that produced a gentle genius named Curtis Mayfield, and Maurice White, and Ramsey Lewis. Same part of Chicago, not the south side, the west side. That's right, little precious. That's right, we talk about you too. Because we love you, and we want your future to be bright. The sky is the limit for you. But oh, Emmett's mother didn't live to see her son. Was not able to see her son live. And what did she say when she stepped to the lectern in that church? 50,000 people marched through that church. First massive civil rights demonstration 3 months before Rosa Parks, towering figure, sat down on a bus in order to stand up for justice in Montgomery, Alabama. Miss Tia, what you got to say? How does integrity face oppression? Steps to the microphone out, tears flowing, Socratic energy oozing out of every nook and cranny of her being. She got some questions, like Fannie Lou Hamer questioning America. And she says what? She says, I don't have a minute to hate. I will pursue justice for the rest of my life. Ooh, that's integrity, y'all. Hard to find a whole lot of folk like that. She wasn't by herself. And I think of other groups sometimes. I have to say to myself, God, we had black supremacy for 400 years. Could you imagine a whole movement of white brothers and sisters saying that they would never hate black people? I guess there would be. I hate to trump their potential, but Jewish brothers and sisters, and I love them deeply, and I know they've been through hell and high water for 2,000 years. I don't hear too many of them love Nazis or love Palestine. They got some magnificent Jewish brothers and sisters, don't get me wrong. But that's not a fundamental part of that tradition. What is it about these Negroes? That's an interesting question. I don't have an answer to it. Malcolm could say, on a bad day, they just cowardly, Brother West. They scared. They've been niggerized. They've been intimidated. So they figure they got to love white folk even when white folk is lynching them because somehow they think that they can get by and wear the mask. Malcolm was rough. He was harsh on the early Martin, wasn't he? Oh, he came. I love Malcolm's candor and frankness, even when I disagreed. At least you know where he stood. He was sincere. Still have a love and empathy toward them. Therefore, I might look like a fool when I say, I love Bull O'Connor. Martin did say that. And the folks said, Martin, you must be losing your mind, man. The man's a gangster, a thug, and he's blowing up young black children. He said, I'm not sadomasochistic. I'm not in love with what he's doing. I'm in love with his humanity because one day he might change. One day he may undergo transformation. One day he might read about John Brown and lo and behold, turn the corner. Now you don't hold your breath on it, brother. But of course, what Martin was also saying was, Malcolm, you were once Malcolm Little. You were a gangster too. Until Elijah loved you. Until the nation loved you out of your thuggishness and allowed you to find your voice. And okay, you may have outgrown Elijah, you may have outgrown the nation of Islam, but there is no Malcolm X without Elijah Muhammad. There's no Malcolm X without the nation of Islam. And that love in the cell, where you turn that cell into a classroom, turn those few books into a library, and became the Malcolm X that we know him to be, and he continued to grow until the bullet hit him. That's the conversation that takes place, not just between a Malcolm and a Martin. It's a conversation that ought to be part and parcel of every community. It ought to be part and parcel of every soul of the Civil War that's taking place inside the soul of each and every one of us as we wrestle with what it is to be committed to justice, even when at times we want to fall prey to revenge. Oh, that's a profoundly human affair. Black studies taking us to the very center of wrestling with what it means to be human. What's the second question, Brother West? Du Bois, 1957. What does honesty do in the name of dissension? What does it mean to be an honest person? James Baldwin used to say, all I want to be in life is a writer and an honest man. It's honorable to be honest in the face of what? Vicious, multi-layered, multi-dimensional lives that constellate around white supremacist ideology. And you notice in America, you can't really say that. Everybody want to call it race. It gets neutered. Oh, so you're talking about race. No, we're talking about white supremacy. Grew up with some black thugs and black haters. I got some hatred inside of me. Nothing but the Holy Ghost holding me together. But there's no institutionalization of black supremacy. No legalization of black supremacy. Even when it looks like black folk are dominating like it, the NBA, you can rest be assured that somebody else is making the big, big, big money and calling the shots as we discussed. Donald Sterling was a graduate of this institution. God bless him, and I know you all also produce Octavia Butler, Michael Harper, Maxine Waters, Diane Watson. So don't let Sterling fill things up, but he's still there. Oh yes. Organized deception. How do you convince black people that they're less beautiful, less intelligent, less moral? How do you convince them they have the wrong hips and lips and noses and hair texture and skin pigmentation, and get them to consent to their oppression and domination every day by keeping them so fearful and afraid and intimidated that they don't want to step out of place? And those who are willing to step out of place are always viewed as crazy and losing their minds and somehow out of touch with reality. And here Newton, stands right in front of the police. Police put the gun to his head. He said, "Shoot me, I'm willing to die on behalf of the people." And black folk looked at you and said, "This Negro's crazy." Never been loved like that. Love is a threat for people who've been taught that they're not worthy of love. Not at that national level. Doesn't mean mama didn't love us. Doesn't mean grandmama and granddaddy and daddy didn't love us. Doesn't mean our aunts and uncles didn't love us. But at that national level, as Garvey used to say over and over and over again, the world has made being black a crime. I intend to make it a virtue, because those who have a fundamental love of black people must be willing to be criminalized. And that's a fundamental fact. Anybody who loves black people enough must be willing to die. It's a fundamental fact. And if you're not willing to die, then say, "I like black folks." I don't love you. Take a bullet in the arm, but not the heart. We laughed, keep from crying. Well, 400 years from Nat Turner to Medgar Evers, anybody who fell in love with black people at the deepest level had to be willing to die. What a state of existence. White supremacy is saying every day to every black person for 400 years, don't you know black history is a curse? Don't you know black hope is a joke? Don't you know that black freedom is a pipe dream? You'll never be able to be fundamentally treated with dignity and decency at the deepest level in America. And if it happens, it won't be among the masses. It will be among the exceptional ones who are willing to be accepted and often are too eager to be well adjusted to injustice and well adapted to indifference to the suffering of the black masses. And that's one of the reasons why it's so very difficult for there to be a black movement. And there's no accident that we don't have a black movement that's pervasive now, given the black suffering, because with a financialized economy, big banks and corporations running things, 1% of the population owning 42% of the wealth, 1% of the population getting 95% of the income growth in the last 3 years under a black president who's Wall Street friendly, too willing to drop bombs with drones on innocent people, 223 children and counting, a child in Yemen and Pakistan and in Afghanistan have exactly the same status as the child in Los Angeles, Connecticut, Michigan, Arizona, or Chicago. Commodified culture, commercialized religion, marketized education. It's no accident that it's so difficult for integrity and honesty to pierce through that thick market culture where everybody's obsessed with the 11th commandment, thou shalt not get caught. And more, it's a matter of the survival of the slickest. We had the magnificent mayor of Compton here earlier, and I was blessed to be with her in the hospital, Sister Asia Brown. I salute my dear sister. I salute my dear sister. I told her you straight out of Compton. Straight out of Compton. Yeah, that's where that gangster rap came from. And we wonder where these highly creative but often misguided young black folk get this obsession with being a gangster. All they got to do is look up in the larger society and see who's getting over with impunity. No accountability whatsoever. And they see that over and over and over and over again. Thank God you got departments like the Department of Pan-African Studies here, because it's still rooted, it's old school, it's integrity, it's honesty, no matter how unpopular it becomes. And there's no such thing as integrity and honesty if you're not willing to sacrifice your popularity in the name of truth and justice. Oh yeah, we're not in this popularity contest. I'll never forget what Brother Martin told Whitney Young. Whitney Young told him, Martin, you're messing everything up by bringing in this poor people's campaign and criticizing Vietnam as if Vietnamese children have the same status as children in gut-bucket Jim Crow, Mississippi. Martin looked at him, he almost slapped him upside his head, and Martin was nonviolent. And he said, Whitney, what you say might get you a foundation grant, but it won't get you a foothold in the kingdom of truth. 1967, but people lying on him, misunderstanding him. Every speech he gave the last 3 months of his life, he would always start off with what? You don't really know me. You don't understand who I am. I'm committed to truth, and the condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. And I listened to Stokely Carmichael, I listened to Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, I listened to Benjamin Spock. They convinced me I can't critique violence in Mississippi and not critique violence in Vietnam. I'm a critic of the empire now. I'm not just critical of American democracy. I'm concerned about indigenous peoples now. They don't have to be in the room for us to be hypersensitive to their suffering. I'm concerned about what Cesar Chavez is doing, not because I want to learn Spanish tomorrow, because I love my Latino brothers and sisters, and I want to make sure that they understand it too. I'm not doing them a favor. I'm standing on behalf of truth and justice. And we'll have a good time together. Oh yeah, we'll have a good time together. But we're there because of truth and justice. That's the kind of focus we need when you talk about black studies, because the black freedom movement is one of the great treasures of the modern world. It is the leaven in the American democratic loaf. It is impossible to empower black poor and working people without empowering poor and working people as a whole. It's impossible to criticize Americans' complicity to white supremacy without also criticizing its imperial tentacles around the world, because you begin to see the connection. You connect the dots. At the same time, you never give up on the specificity and the distinctiveness of black subjugation. That's why Pan-African perspective is still indispensable, because it allows us to always keep track of the white supremacist dimension of the subjugation and domination that is not simply political and economic, it is psychic, it is spiritual, and if we're going to hit it head on, we have to put on the whole armor: analytical armor, spiritual armor, moral armor, political armor, economic armor. And we know historically, anytime black people begin to wake up, straighten their backs up and stand the way Sly Stone said, stand, there's a cross for you to bear, things to go through if you're going anywhere. Stand, there's a midget standing tall and the giant beside him about to fall. That's Sly Stone in Vallejo, California, 1970. Anytime that happens, it ricochets. The sleepwalking slowly but surely begins to unravel. And that's precisely why the FBI, CIA, in these days, the National Defense Authorization Act passed by the Obama administration that says that any American could not only be detained without trial, but can be assassinated without accountability. Which means that Martin Luther King Jr. was alive, he could be either detained or assassinated because he had a direct link to a terrorist named Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was on the U.S. terrorist list until 2008. And Martin would say, that's right, I'm associated with that terrorist. Do what you're gonna do with me, U.S. government. You're already tracking my every moment, and I'm finding out if I were to come back from the dead that my photographer was an FBI informant calling every day after he took the pictures, took over 10,000 pictures of Brother Martin and called the FBI every day. That's what you call keeping track of a powerful black man tied to a movement, willing to live and die and tell the truth. And we still have political prisoners right now in this very moment in the prisons of folk who were willing to pay that kind of price. That takes me to the third question, and I'm coming to a close. What does decency do in the face of insult? That's the third query of Du Bois. Integrity, honesty, decency. Anybody concerned with integrity, honesty, and decency ought to be concerned about black studies. Now, if you're not concerned about just being honest and decent and having integrity, then that's your choice. That's fine. Just be honest about it. Boys, oh yes, the black freedom struggle. It has no monopoly on any of this, any peoples, any nations, any community. It takes stabs at it. But how do you preserve your decency in the face of chronic insult? And I could just stop right now and just have black folk testify. And we'd be here for years. Based on last week's experience. It's true. Wounds, scars, bruises. This is not victimology at all. No, not at all. It's only victimology if you stop with the wounds and don't talk about resistance.
Yes.
Stop with the scars and don't talk about empowerment. If you stop with the bruises and don't talk about organizing and mobilizing. Yeah, that would be victimology. But we're talking about being victimized, and then you think critically, and then you speak candidly, and then you courageously fight back. That's what Du Bois was talking about. That's what Du Bois was talking about. But the last query. What does virtue do in the face of brute force? Brute force. Police, guns, cannon, coercion, force. Again, something something that's very, very difficult to talk about in America. Oftentimes people say, well, we need a national conversation on race. No, we need a serious, painful inquiry into a vicious legacy of white supremacy. Let's begin with the history of brute force against black people. Or you gonna make me feel guilty? This ain't got nothing to do with you and your guilt. We're talking about the truth. You may have read Brother Coach's piece in the Atlantic Monthly, The Case for Reparations. And he does a decent job, but of course he kind of acts as if this is the first time the case has been made. No sense of history at all, but I may read this. Our challenge for the younger generation, Sankofa now. Connect to the past before you move forward. But he's just completely overwhelmed by the force. And then you watch the dialogue on MSNBC with the neoliberals pushing Obama propaganda every day. And they don't really want to come to terms with the brute force. Oh my God. Thank God that's in the past. No, that's not in the past. No. Just spend a little time with our precious poor brothers and sisters, what they have to deal with every day. And I'm not just talking about the police with uniforms, the ones that don't use the uniforms, keeping track. Forever on the run. Can't find a driver's license. Do you really have a felon? Do you really have a felony charge so you ought not to be in that public house? Shouldn't be on the job. Over and over and over and over again. Generation after generation after generation. Pilage of wreckage upon wreckage of unrealized potential, wasted lives over and over and over again, and no serious discussion about it in the public discourse. Both political parties, including our dear brother president. Can you imagine a black president in 1945 winning and all the black people giving him a standing ovation, and he doesn't say a mumbling word about Jim Crow because he doesn't believe there's a black agenda. He just thinks there's an American agenda. You want all Americans to help, black people are helped too. No, we Jim Crow down here, man. We need some serious attention. We ain't whining, we're wailing. Bob Marley and the Wailers, not the whiners. We wailing down there. We got catastrophe. So we end up now, new Jim Crow Jr. That's what that vicious prison system is. And hardly any serious talk about it, as if these precious folk in there are invisible. I'm especially talking about the 62% in there on soft drugs. Now the murderers and the rapists, okay, I don't give up on them, but they need to spend some time. They need to get it together. I'm a Christian, everybody got a second chance. They need to get it together. I'm talking about that 62%. White population, 12% of the young white youth flying high in the friendly skies every week. Black population, 12%. Flying high in the friendly sky. 65% of convictions, black. And they say, oh, you call it a racist criminal justice? Brother West, on television, looks like you're just being hyperbolic. Malcolm used to say what? When you're on the stove, you can't be polite. You can't sweet talk folk when your people's being treated like that. It may sound hyperbolic to you, but let me tell you something. If it was your precious child, you'd be saying exactly the same thing I'm saying. I am the human being you are too. And the only difference is, if it was your child, I'd be saying it too. But as my child, you're not saying a mumbling word. Something is wrong. Something's deeply wrong. That's what the challenging part is when we're talking about black studies. You're talking about a black freedom movement. I'm not talking about all black people. I'm talking about the black freedom struggle. I'm not talking about black thugs and black gangsters and black sellouts and black mediocre folk not concerned about excellence and sacrifice. I'm talking about those who are willing to meet the challenge. That's what black studies is all about. And that's why we're here, and I thank God we're here, and I thank you all for giving me all this time, and we will have a good discussion right after. Thank you so very much.
For our Q&A, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a lecturer in Pan-African Studies. My name is Dr. Melvin R. Shelton Jr. We'd like to thank y'all for coming out, and as we set up, I wanted to take a time while Dr. West is getting ready. We wanted to thank you all for coming out. Can we just give Dr. West one more hand? What we're going to do is we're setting up for the Q&A, so let me set some of the ground rules. Introduce yourselves now.
Hello everyone, I'm Jelani Hendricks, a recent graduate from CSULA. Major in Pan-African Studies, and I'm very honored to be here with the great Cornel West.
Hi everyone, my name is Juliana Nascimento. I'm a sociology major. I'm graduating next month. And I'm also very honored to be on stage with Dr. Cornel West.
How's everybody doing? Brother Gabriel, coming to you from University of California, Berkeley. I'm studying in pursuit of my doctorates in African diaspora studies. You already know though, before I was a golden bear, I was a golden eagle. This is my stomping ground.
What we're going to do is I'm going to ask a question, our students are going to ask a question, and then we're going to go down to the floor, and Sister Giampi will take care. So I see we have two people. Then we're going to jump up to the folks that's representing up in the cheap seats. I see you up there, represent. Up in the nosebleeds. I see you still represent up there.
All these seats are free.
So Dr. West,
You gonna say, you said, I said.
okay.
No, we're in it together, we're in it
We're
together.
together.
Right on.
Dr. West, the question that I wanted to ask you is that I'm a tremendous fan of your work, and you know, this is like really almost like surreal for me because disciplinary, you know, I'm a philosopher, and someone said today to me, they was like, well, you know, you're right up Cornel West's alley, and I was said, humbly, I said, well, you know, Cornel West is the alley. So, try to be up that. So, with that, Dr. West, the question that I have for you, in light of what you had talked about, is to what extent has the possibility of a qualitatively different social order become so obsolescent in this modern epoch? The last possibility of its realization is in the aesthetic dimension. And to what extent do you find Black studies as being, and though you've talked about this, vital to the formulation of this aesthetic and qualitative social change?
Yeah, that's a profound question because there are many who would argue that America does not have the capacity to undergo fundamental social change in a progressive direction, that America would go fascist before it would go socialist, that America would be right-wing, but for every leftist in the country, there's probably about 35 Ku Klux Klansmen. So that it is difficult to conceive of how fundamental social change can take place, and yet we know historically that progressives of all colors and revolutionaries of all colors have always been against the odds. And America is not the only stage. You have to think internationally. You have to think about connections to Latin America, to Africa, Europe, what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in Asia. And so in that sense, I think we have to be very honest and candid about how difficult fundamental social change is in the United States. There's no doubt America right at the moment, and for most of its history, has had a higher capacity for counter-revolution than it's had for revolution. The only exception was the American Revolution, but that was led by slaveholders. that was led by slaveholders. So they were magnificent revolutionaries vis-a-vis the British Empire, but they were thuggish slaveholders when it came to precious indigenous peoples, when it came to black folk. And I keep mentioning indigenous peoples because oftentimes you get too many black intellectuals who act as if the only major problem in the United States is the vicious treatment of black people, and that's a lie. That's not true. That is not true at all. It starts with indigenous people, then it's the stealing of the land of our Mexican brothers and sisters, the moving borders and so forth and so on, and then it's the mistreatment of white workers, and then the women, and then gay brothers and lesbian sisters, and bisexual, and transgender, and so forth. Oh yes, and vicious treatment of Jews. I mean, the irony these days when I see my Jewish right-wing folk thinking America's the promised land, don't they understand that anti-Jewish hatred cuts deep in America even today? And it's going to be the responsibility of progressives to make sure we don't have any place for anti-Jewish hatred, even as we bring critique to bear on the vicious Israeli occupation of Palestine. It's not anti-Semitic at all. It's a moral stand. It's a moral stand. And Jewish progressives will go with that. So that in that sense, I do believe that the art becomes fundamental. But it's art understood not as aesthetic as something that is distant from struggle, but it's as voices, it's markings, it's paintings, it's drawings, it's sound in certain direction. And by direction, I don't mean just political direction. I mean trying to wrestle with the truth of what it means to be human. In whatever forms it takes. It can take fragmented forms and modernist forms. It can take realistic forms and older modern forms and so forth. And I think for black people, of course, I think that it's been in music. I mean, I've always understood my own calling as trying to be true to the depth of the voice of a David Ruffin, or a Dr. Hackett, or Nina Simone. Because what's in that voice is a profound will to truth, and an unbelievable yearning for freedom. And if you want a foretaste of freedom, just listen to the greatest black voices. Carmen McRae and Sarah Vaughan and Luther Vandross, Erykah Badu. Beyonce, depends on which day of the week. Because entertaining ain't the same thing as a will to truth and a yearning for freedom. But you can have a deep will to truth and a yearning for freedom and be highly entertaining, like John Coltrane. But a lot of entertainers don't have that. It's just tricks and trickery and superficial techniques to stimulate in order to make money for the big businesses and so forth and so on, you see. So that this issue of art is fundamental. Absolutely. That's why art is not a plaything, especially for poor people, especially for black people. Not at all. Art, sometimes that's all we hope.
All right, so to make it quick, we have experienced a real people of color finally demanding recognition and space in this academic setting here on campus. And there's a strong sense of entitlement to the academic space that prohibits the so-called progressives from giving up their privilege. So can you speak a little bit on this, paying special attention to the uniquely anti-Black sentimentality that is both implicit and explicit on our college campus, keeping in mind the kind of dog whistle racism that is never acknowledged and many times outright denied? And how can we combat this here on campus, both as Black and brown folk and as progressive white allies?
That's a tough one because there's so many different aspects and facets to it. But I think that, one, I just want to salute those we've mentioned before who are trying to hold up the bloodstained banner of truth and justice, not in the spirit of self-righteousness, but being self-critical, but recognizing you're cutting against the grain. We live in a very deeply conservative moment, which sounds really paradoxical, because you got a black president and progressive Democratic Party fighting the Tea Party and so forth and so on. But that's not true. The discourse in America has moved so far to the right in the last 30 years, so far to the right. And with a black president, it's been so easy now to try to somehow assimilate and incorporate any of the fundamental threats to a status quo, because the status quo is run by black men. So all of a sudden now everybody's American. Historically, black people have been cross bearers rather than flag wavers. But as soon as Barack won, we became flag wavers. Now, I don't mind waving the flag if it corresponds to truth and justice. But if you're waving a flag and not saying a mumbling word about New Jim Crow, not a mumbling word about drones, not a mumbling word about Wall Street domination, not a mumbling word about occupation, invasion of other countries, then your flag waving, lo and behold, becomes very similar to the flag waving 50 years ago when you were Jim Crow. But now it's black folk doing it. Now, it's going to stop once Barack and Michelle and the two precious daughters leave. Because then it's going to be open seas. And black folk going to do what? Go into a deep depression. Because holding on for this one symbolic thing. And we were holding on for dear life. Situation got worse. Poverty went up. Middle class devastated. Working class, massive unemployment. The poor, still demonized. Black men, especially poor black boys, are what? Criminalized. They're already criminals the moment they're perceived. That's what Trayvon was about. He was criminalized before he was even shot. He was shot because he was perceived as a criminal. Brother ain't done nothing. There's a long history of that. To be black is to be criminalized for so long. But now it's primarily visited on our priceless, poor black brothers and sisters, but especially brothers. Now the sisters catching hell, don't get me wrong. But in terms of the vicious violence, it's the brother. In terms of massive incarceration, even though sisters are increasing, it's still disproportionately black boys. You see? And that is what needs to be called into question. And that's part and parcel of what's going on this campus. You see, look, we're not going with the deodorized discourse. We're going to keep it funky. Public schools. And it's catching. I mean, it's going from city to city to city to city to city. Not enough voices raised. But things, I think an awakening is going to take place, and I think that the Pan-African Studies Department will be part and parcel of that awakening. That's why I said before, I mean, I'm not here just for this one time. That you want me back to defend this department, give me a telephone call, 212-380-0481. That's New York City, 120th Street, Broadway. That's where I am. Unless I'm at church or at the club. Oh, yeah. Or how players live.
Dr. West.
UC Berkeley.
Yes, sir.
We got Stan Royster here from Sacramento with the UC Berkeley. My brother's close friend. My brother went to Berkeley. Raise your hand, brother. There he is. Sacramento, and UC Berkeley too. Lord, yes. UC Berkeley.
So, speaking of UC Berkeley, I gotta admit that my matriculation into that ivory tower institution could not have been possible without the guidance of the beautiful Mama Melina and the rest of the Pan-African Studies Department. I would not be UC Berkeley for Dr. C.R.D. Alisi, my intellectual father, my spiritual father, my guide, you know, my arrow. So, you know, just earlier this year, many of you were all engaged in a turbulent battle just to preserve our department. And despite our output, we have a sister that's going to SUNY Albany to get her master's. We have a sister that's going to get her master's from UCLA. We have another one getting her PhD in history. Despite this unprecedented output, we are continuously faced with institutional repression. Now, I've never told anybody this, but one of the things that Dr. Alisi told me when I got accepted into Berkeley was the PhD isn't the goal. PhD isn't the goal, it's a tool. It's a tool to transform your social reality. And if the PhD isn't doing that today, then drop it. Because if what you're doing today isn't opening doors for the next brother or the next sister to do the same or go further, then you need to be doing something else. You need to be doing something else. So, you know, this is something that Dr. Halisi imparted into me. And to put your work in conversation with his political philosophy, his cultural philosophy. He was also the co-founder of the US organization, or the vice chair of the US organization. My question to you is, what are the imperatives of those of us seeking to dismantle this, you know, long-standing academic apartheid? What are the imperatives of those of us, you know, who are becoming disillusioned by this false notion of universal colorblindness, of certified knowledge, of white people holding certified knowledge over our lived realities and our historical experiences and our biographies, and dictating the way in which that discourse is deployed? What are the imperatives of those of us seeking to dispel this notion that we have agency to tell our own stories, to tell our own stories? What are our imperatives, Dr. West?
Well, I think that something tells me that you know the answer to your question. And I think we both agree. We got the muster the courage, tell the truth, expose the lies, bear witness, be willing to pay a cost. And some of us will have to die. We don't want everybody to die because we want folk around. But some will. But that's just a measure of the depth of the conviction and the commitment. Those three. Well, but there's different ways of dying, though, brother. I mean, you can die of cancer at 90, you can get shot by the police because you're fighting for black people at 22. So there is a difference. But the question is, in addition to our dear brother, Halisi, because I think what he said is so very true. I believe that in the depths of my heart. But the only thing I would add, this is what I learned from the jazz musician, that you want to make sure that you are finding joy in serving the people. See what I mean? So it's something you love to do. Coltrane's blowing his horn for 18 hours and goes to bed with the horn in his mouth and wake up blowing. He's doing that because he loves to do it. He's finding unbelievable joy and fun in doing that, but he also wants to touch other people's souls in the joy and fun that he's doing. So you find your calling and your passion. You see, if Willie Mays want to play baseball, let that Negro play. Why? Because he's great at it and he loves to do it, and he does it in such a way that he empowers a young brother named Cornel West in Sacramento. My father drives down to Candlestick every 2 weeks to see that brother. And I'm trying to be Willie Mays. But he's got that passion. You see what I mean? So I can have a similar passion in another context. But in that sense, there's no me without Willie. There's no me without James Brown. 4 hours in his concert. And at the end of the concert, what does he say every time? I am who I am because I'm an extension of you. Did somebody come here and we didn't play your song? You didn't play Soul Power. Hit it, Bootsy. 4 hours. That's service to the people. These days you go to a hip-hop concert, the Negro gives you the sense that you lucky he showed up. He showed up, you lucky he showed up. He got 22 minutes and he James about 4 hours. That's why Michael Jackson could go for 4 hours. He's imitating James. He finds joy in what he's doing. Intellectuals. In the library, in the laboratory, doctors, with your patients, find joy in what you're doing. That's different than pleasure. American culture is a joyless quest for pleasure. Everybody wants pleasure. Everybody wants pleasure. Pleasure is insatiable. Insatiable. I tell my young folk all the time. I say, do you think life is just bodies bumping up against each other and asking what the freak level is? that's the case, just connect with an orgasm machine. Have orgasms every minute for the rest of your life. No conversation, no context, just let it flow forever, 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 forever. There ain't no joy in that. Ain't no joy in that. You need to slow down and put on some Luther. Have a conversation, talk about things. Get to know each other. That's joy. You see the difference? You want joy as an intellectual. Because I get joy in the library. I'm telling you, I be breakdancing up there. I won't go on this long for the other answers. But I deeply appreciate you all taking time to raise these questions. Taking time, Professor Abdullah, for this conversation. We can jump in. Oh, my brother from Fresno.
Yes, sir.
I'm so sorry to overlook you, brother.
It's all good.
Yeah.
All right, man. I just want to say, thanks for coming. It was a big turnout. I've never seen this many people at any event on this campus, and I was here for 5 years. So I want to, thank you for that. Your presence, was a blessing. And speaking of your presence, kind of like what Dr. Abdullah said. We've been doing activist work, protests. We had a battle for ethnic studies. We had a battle against the student success fee, the tuition hikes, and we can never get this many people, to come and support that and get that movement going. But, a popular person like yourself, the house is filled up. The Luckman is sold out. That doesn't never happen, right? And I feel that critical consciousness is a beautiful thing. And, we need to be doing this for every event, for every social injustice. And I kind of feel today was kind of like, okay, you say you in church when you're not at the club, right? So you know how the church goes. So on Easter Sunday, everybody at church, right?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody at church, and they best threads, right?
That's right.
Smile on their face.
That's
but what
right.
happens the next Sunday? It's just the regulars, right? So my question to you is, how do we get our other brothers and sisters, on board so we can get the ball moving so we can really get what we need?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I salute you being a distinguished graduate of this place too, though, brother. Absolutely. But one thing I think to keep in mind is that, numbers are fine, but numbers are not the bottom line. It's quality. You see, you can have 50 people on fire who do more work in the long run than 1,000 who are lukewarm. You see? And I think a lot of times, the celebrity culture can be so superficial, and people can get certain things on the cheap, just in terms of exposure and what have you. We got Brother Ren Brown here, who runs the Ebony Repertory Theater. Give this brother a hand right there. He's my dear brother. Ren Brown in the house. Now see, this brother right here, he's a national treasure. He's an example of quality. He's got a show going on right now, recently on Paul Robeson. Unbelievable. But you could run the same, you could run another play on Paul Robeson in the mainstream, and people just come running because they think somehow, the mainstream, the water's colder. The ice is better. But the quality at the Ebony Repertory Theater is high. Give me quality. The movement in the 1960s, never a majority of black people. How many churches was it in Montgomery that came out for Martin? 17 out of 90. How many was it of young people who were sit-in? 13%, that's a lot of black students. 13% out of 100%. We're not talking about large numbers. We just want enough critical mass of high quality folk, integrity, honesty, decency, willing to sacrifice, with vision, sense of history, subversive memory, and having some fun. And that's part of the movement here as well. You got the high quality, so you want more. But you know, don't ever get discouraged when you're gonna look and say, oh my God, we got all these. If we could just have all these, well, no, because when we got arrested in New York, we had like 400 people at the rally, and they dragged 27 of us to jail. That was all right. 27 was better than 5. We've been dragged when it was just 2. That's all right. It's like that sometimes. So don't get discouraged. But you continually try to expand. But as you expand, keep that quality in mind. That's the key. Definitely. Yes, we'll go right here.
Hi, Dr. West.
My dear sister, how you doing there?
I'm good. How are you?
So good to see you.
Good to see you too. I just have a quick question because, okay, I just turned 15 and I love Beyonce. I know people have like a lot of...
Oh no, I love Beyonce too. I love Beyonce too.
And I know people have a lot of views about her, especially about her like feminist views and theories now.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I just wanted to know what you think about her because I have a lot of friends and I really look up to her and like it's important to kind of figure out where she fits into the way we have to view
Oh,
ourselves.
no, and I appreciate that question. At 15 years old, you're so brilliant and beautiful, I'm telling you. No, but what Beyonce is, first for me, she's a great entertainer. There's no doubt about that. Level of energy, discipline, talent, and so forth. I don't think that she is a magnificent singer. You see what I mean? You take Wanda Hutchinson, who sings with the emotions. You take Shirley Jones, who sings with the Jones Girls. And we ain't even got the Gladys and Aretha yet. It's a whole different level. Everybody don't have to be at that level, but she's not a magnificent voice. She is a package. And she's a magnificent package. And I'm not just talking about the way she looked, but she shake her thing, you know. But she's also part of a culture of superficial spectacle. Cultural superficial spectacle is much more concerned with just stimulating and titillating rather than nurturing at that deep level. Now, she sang a song called Halo that moved my soul, because I'm always looking for soul stirring. I come from a soul stirring tradition, not the body stimulating tradition. The soul stirring, that's Sam Cooke, that's Johnny Taylor, that's Lou Rawls, that's soul stirring like the deep level. Now, I don't mind my body stimulated, but I want more than that. See what I mean? She sang Halo. She touched my soul. At last, don't let her sing it. But she can mainstream it, she can streamline it because she is the great figure in the cultural superficial spectacle. But she is a great entertainer, there's no doubt about that. And I think that there's elements that she has that can be empowering. What I am critical of, and this is where I agree with Bell Hooks. You know, Bell Hooks called her a terrorist and so forth. That was harsh. But I do understand it is a kind of assault, especially on young girls who are looking for a conception of what it means to be human that's beyond simply the way their body looks. You see? Now I agree with that critique. And I do think in the last 2 years, I don't really follow her videos that much, but I've seen 1 or 2, and I can see certain things getting worse and worse, more tied to pornographic culture than what I'd understand what it means to be a woman who is concerned with empowering women. Now we can have a larger debate. Some people say, well, pornography is empowering women. Women doing what they want to do and they freaking out. And I think women don't have a choice. Women ought to be free to choose to do what they want to do. But when they make a choice, they got to be accountable and responsible for it. Because there are consequences. When you are so highly visible and you're using your body in this way, and I got a daughter 13, you see, I'm no Puritan, but I think critically on what she's looking at, we have long discussion, because she tilting toward Beyonce a little bit too, even though she likes Ariana. A little bit more. Little Ariana. What's her last name?
Grande.
The sister from Miami. Yeah. What was her last name again? Yes, Grande. That's, oh, God. They just gonna kill me for forgetting her last name. I've heard that new song 150 times already. But the important thing for you, I think, is you read her critically. And you think for yourself. You don't have to imitate Bell Hooks. You don't have to imitate anybody else. You think for yourself. But read her critically because you want to be a woman who's also influenced by Angela Davis, Nina Simone, Roberta Flack. See what I mean?
Yes.
Abby Lincoln. You know who Abby Lincoln is now? Oh yes, Freedom Sweet, Max Roach. Abby Lincoln, check it out tonight. Oh yes, Abby Lincoln got something to say. She's a great artist. When you get to Billie Holiday, ooh, that's gonna hurt you. Oh, that Billie something else. And you end with Sarah Vaughan. She's the greatest of the greatest of the greatest. Sarah, divine Sarah. You get that image, unbelievable, excellence, dignity, sophistication, class, but also gut bucket and funky at the same time. They go hand in hand. God bless you, though. Thank you for that good question.
Hi, my name's I have this question. You know, as I try to look at the history and see where we need to go,
Yes.
look at like Marcus Garvey and how he was able to unite a huge crowd. Then look at like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. Look at Ronald Reagan and how he created this tradition and brought us Kwanzaa, really united people in the foundation of theory. And then seeing like how everybody, just each scholar pushed the needle, pushed it to where it needed to go, and added to it, and took.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. It's a tough one because there's so many crucial issues out there. We don't know which particular issue would be the major issue that would serve as a catalyst. In my own life, I try to, I've shifted toward young people. Most of my lectures in high school and junior high and prisons. But that's just in my own life because I'm getting old and moving off the stage fairly soon, I'm sure. Because I've been at it for a long time. And therefore, if in fact hitting the new Jim Crow could be a major catalyst, then I would be right in the middle of it. But who knows? It may be the ecological catastrophe. Who knows? It could be the vicious violence against women of all colors. It's hard to know which particular issue would serve as an issue that would generate the kind of coalescing for a movement.
But like the elements within the community, like thought, some theories that within the community.
Well, you must have a vision that's broad enough that embraces the different kinds of oppression so that you believe in being morally consistent with a systemic analysis and courageous witness. Absolutely. But it's just, so, but it's difficult. Immigration is going to be, we know immigration is so fundamental right now. And I've spent a lot of time in Arizona and Texas as well. But most of my time is spent now in the prison context. With Michelle Alexander's movement she's trying to do it. Thanks so much.
We have time for one more question.
Oh, just one more. All right.
Hey, Dr. West.
How you doing, my brother?
My name is Derek. I'm a vice president of the Black Business Student Association at UCLA.
UCLA?
Yes, sir.
Is that what Brother Robert Kelly? Yes. Send my love and respect for that brother.
Yes, sir. We've also been invited to have our African Studies Department recognized as official partner. But I'm a huge fan of yours way back. I used to listen to you on Brother Tyler Smiley's show. You and Dr. Claude, you and Tyler Smiley were the leaders in calling President Obama to task to help black folks. He responded with the Brothers Keepers initiative. What are your thoughts and opinion on that? And then what can we as university students do to help support that initiative?
Well, I mean, you always, again, want to think for yourself. I think that what Brother Tavis and I were trying to do was to just be true to ourselves. And we were concerned about the bipartisan consensus on neither party talking about poverty, neither party talking about Wall Street crimes, neither party talking about imperial crimes in the form of drones killing innocent people. I think that one has to make one's decision on that and then speak one's mind. I think that the trot out those young, precious black brothers the way the president did as a kind of case of national charity and philanthropy and not give up one penny from the U.S. government in terms of public policy. Symbolically, it was powerful. Substantially, it was pathetic. You never go to another community Never. You think you're going to go to the business roundtable of corporate elites and say, I don't have one penny to give you in terms of public policy? You think you're going to go to APEX, the conservative Jewish organization, not the organization of progressive Jews, and say, I don't have one public policy to give you? You think you're going to go to the Catholics and do that? You give any other group. But to go to black folk, well, we've got some corporations that are trying to raise money to help these black brothers because they pulling their pants up and they recognizing that they can make it through life without having fathers. And you fall right into the discourse of pathology again, you see. Pathologizing black folk whining, black folk not doing enough, and so forth and so on. Wait a minute, 40% of our babies are living in poverty. That's a catastrophe. That's an emergency. And anybody knows if it was 40% of anybody else's babies, with the exception of indigenous peoples and Latinos, it would be an emergency. You got 40% of white brothers and sisters, children living in poverty. You think it wouldn't be an emergency? You'd be having town hall meetings every other day. Every Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, all of them be concerned about it. But no, 40% of our babies living in poverty, and we raise our voices. Quit whining, pull your pants up. Come on. It's pathetic. But the question is, how do you do it in such a way that, you're not an Obama hater? Because, Brother Taylor, we're Kevin, oh, y'all hate Obama. No, we don't hate the brother. We hate his failure of nerve, and we hate his relation to corporate elites and big banks. We can't stand the white supremacists that's lying on the brother. We can't stand the racists lying on him. We can't stand elements of the Tea Party lying on him. Oh, he must be a Muslim. He ain't a Muslim. He's a Christian. He must be a socialist. Please. Please. I'm a democratic socialist. Martin King was a democratic socialist. Malcolm called himself at the end a socialist. A socialist is not anybody who tied to the communist movement or tied to so-and-so. A. Philip Randolph was, Paul Rhodes. We go on and on and on and on and on. It's hard to find a Negro who hadn't thought about the situation seriously from the vantage point of poor people and haven't moved toward a socialist position. Right. But it's not the ism. The ism ain't the word. That's why I don't call myself a socialist. I'm a revolutionary Christian. So there ain't no ism about it at all. It's me, Jesus, black folk, poor folk, ready to die. But it will look more and more like a socialist society to the degree to which it gets some accountability of big banks, some accountability big corporations, with that 1% having 42% of the wealth. You can't have 1% with 42% of the wealth and 22% of all of your children living in poverty and 40% of red, 40% of brown, and 40% of black children living in poverty and think that's normal. That's pathological itself. That's the pathology, thinking that's normal. And then we wonder why our young people are so out of control, because they wonder who really loves them. Who, you remember Marvin Gaye's song in the spring of 1971? The greatest popular album ever done. What's going on? He raised the question, what? Who really cares? That's what young folk are asking. Be growing up in poverty. You say what? Well, that's cold. That's a deep one too. That's a deep one. I'm with you on that one too. But I'm just talking about that question right now, though, brother. Who really cares? And if you find out who cares, then you hit inner city blues, because you go into the city with your caring, with your loving, with your truth telling, with your witness bearing, and so forth. You see. And I think. And again, I say this, having to protect the president against vicious lies, but having to make sure that, like any president, any head of the American empire, no matter what color they are, they still constitute a boot on the neck of poor people, and it doesn't make any difference what color the foot in the boot is if the boot is on the neck of poor people, and poor black or brown, red or yellow or whatever. brother Jeremy. How you doing? Get his brother a hand, too. This brother been working with me for many years. Right now, the brother Travis is operation. Love you, little brother. I haven't seen you in a long time. Your family doing all right? Yeah, that's good. Did we begin to get at your question, though? You all been so kind to go on like this. But again, I just want to salute what you're doing, because this is just such an inspiration.
Well, we are just so appreciative of you coming and spending time with us. Let's give Dr. West another round. Supervisor Ridley Thomas for bringing Dr. West here, for paying for it. We want to thank the president of the university for allowing us to use the Luckman Theater. We thank the faculty union here, my union, the California Faculty Association, for helping to sponsor. First Year Experience for helping to sponsor.
That's my union.
Our students, some of whom drove 6-7 hours to get here from the Bay Area. I've always been told never let you leave without asking you for something. There's two things we need you to do. We need you to, sorry. Afterwards, if you want to come down, we can do that. I'm sorry, but we have to clear the Luckman. So, there's two things we need from you. If you have money to give to help students finish school, please consider making a contribution. You came for free, you parked for free, some of y'all ate for free. How much would you have paid to come, right? If you have money to give, I don't care if it's $1 or $100, please consider making a contribution to the Halisi Scholarship Fund. We have volunteers and Pan-African Studies t-shirts ready to take your contributions. The second thing that you can do, if you don't have any money, there's something called voting with your feet. If you believe in the kind of programming that Dr. West was talking about, if you believe in Pan-African Studies, if you believe your intellectual pursuits should be tied to your community vision, then you need to think about majoring, minoring, or at the very least taking classes in Pan-African Studies. So there are some peach sheets. We are the only department in the entire university with a 4-year graduation guarantee. Okay? Our graduates go on to the best universities in the country. They get some of the best jobs that you could possibly imagine. We have students at UC Berkeley, UCLA, SUNY Albany, University of Chicago, and NYU, and USC, all right now. So that's just the current students. So if you want to be successful, we talk about student success, major in Pan-African Studies. I want to, are they ready? Batanya, can we bring them out? Batanya, you're around? Okay. There's a couple of last thank yous as Batanya's getting the last thing together. The people, we don't have a staff in Pan-African Studies. We have a wonderful staff member who is lovingly caring for her father, waiting until he goes to sleep and coming in until 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning to make this happen. And that's Batanya Santos. So we want to a godsend who Facebooked me 2 weeks ago and said, Dr. Abdullah, I'm home and I don't have no job. Can I come work with you for free? And she helped to pull all of this together. She too was here until the wee hours of the night for the last 2 weeks. Julie DeRazzo, please come out. She had to take her shoes off. I'm right behind you, Julie. And so
that happens that's important on this campus, the cross-cultural center is at the center of it. That's why it's called the cross-cultural center, right? And the director of the cross-cultural center, my brother in struggle, my brother in all of this, Fred Smith.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I didn't want to say anything, but I'm glad you all enjoyed tonight. And also, we have another great scholar on campus this week, Proclaim. Tomorrow, 9:50 Pan-African Studies, King Hall D4057. Tomorrow at 3:15, Los Angeles Room, Women's and Gender Studies reception.
Babacar, where are you? Stacy, is he coming?